So when you reverse engineer the salt that's in the sea, and that we can measure the amount that it gets saltier every year that passes, it only is around about 65 million years old. When we put all of the continents together, the continents of the Earth are around 37 miles thick, and then the ocean floors are only around about 4 or 5 miles thick, and are all very new floors of basalt mainly. And that water became deposited more on the Earth, and the Earth is about 12 times larger than it was. But if you shrink the Earth to be 12 times smaller than it is now, all the continents fit perfectly together. And of course, if you're standing in San Francisco and you're looking across at Tokyo, across the Pacific, if you set out every day that you would set out into the future, you'd have to go just a little further to get there, because the seas are growing. And so, in our ancient past that we're taught, we're not really taught that there was much cultural or technological achievement, but we might well ask the following questions, of course, that if humans had a long time to perfect their skills, then what the reason is why we really don't find necessary artifacts as an abundance that shows, and that is indicative of more of an advanced civilization. But all these earth changes, tsunamis and things have washed a lot of things away, and certainly some of these advanced civilizations in Lemurian times came from the Pacific, and water has covered a lot of this over. But the Lemurians were the ones who had boats, and the Maldive Islands, you can easily see that where there was at one point inland ports, which has really been pushed up now and is far much further higher than sea level. You can look at the Andes and also see how at one point that halfway up the mountains there's a coastline, which absolutely is evidence that that was a coastline where water lapped as to an edge. And so the water levels really have changed quite radically, and lots of evidence has surfaced of an advanced civilization having existed in the Pacific, and that this advanced civilization certainly has dimensions which they put into their structure. For instance, the structure that's off the islands, the Reiku Islands off Japan, Yonaguni Island, for instance, where there's a beautiful structure in the sea there. It has a dimension which is the very same dimension that's been put into the Pyramid of the Sun in South America, which points to a time that structure in South America, the Pyramid of the Sun, has an archaeological sort of calendar, like an altar, which is pointing to the very time of 2012, December 22nd, when Orion dips below the horizon. These are people who really had a great deep understanding of astrology for them to create these beautiful monuments and megalithic structures. Still to this very day, people question how it was possible for them to be able to move such an enormous stones and obliques and things, some weighing some 70 tons or more. How could we don't even today necessarily have, even in our modern equipment, the ability to be able to work with such enormity in these megalithic stones and things. So we might question as to how that could have been done, you know. But, yeah. So how are we going, mate? You might have a question or two at this point. Well, there's certainly, there was electricity, because if you reverse engineer the Pyramid of Giza, which Stonehenge and the Pyramid of Giza and the Pyramid of the Sun and the monuments under the water of Yonaguni Island all have a very same dimension, which, because it has the same dimension, you could say that the very same people built all of these, including the Pyramid of Giza. But when we reverse engineer the Pyramid of Giza, it can easily be shown to have been an energy generator that tapped into the natural forces of the earth, and that they had wireless electricity. I mean, it can be perfectly explained how that can have created electricity. Certainly we've found statues and things during this period of time, which the statues have various precious metal and things, which has been through electrolysis process. It's electroplated, and it wasn't hammered there. It is absolute evidence that they had to have had electricity to be able to create that electroplating. And you could say in the cutting of the stones and things, it shows that they can have used sound to cut things, and also there's certainly evidence of huge saw marks where there were saws that were some 36 feet or more in diameter. And it can be perfectly explained by, and has been by, people that have investigated and discovered wireless electricity, that wireless electricity is a possibility for us, that vested interest could be allowing of this, which at the moment, of course, because vested interest is the Federal Reserve Bank, and these are people who own oil, and so they have not been interested to, forward any greater and more powerful, cleaner technology, because it would sort of clear away oil, which is what they own. So, I think there's been a lot of forces that have caused people to have lost information. But certainly, if you put me in the desert somewhere and you left me there for the night, it's possible for me, if you came back in the morning, you can see a stone that's been lifted that could be several tons. Yes, and it's possible for me, using natural forces, which I know how to do, to lift that stone, and it would be, standing up by the morning, and that there's people who have done things like this. So I don't feel that it's necessarily impossible for us to use the natural forces of what exists to have been able to create these monuments and things. But when Cortez was on the rampage in South America, there is in the history books recorded that one of the very last stones that was being shifted to make a fortress in South America, and that the people had shifted this stone from a quarry, and it had gone over mountains and all sorts of things to get to this place, but then it was abandoned around the time of Cortez's invasion and things, And so we certainly we have evidence of all sorts of artifacts. It's considered that an Italian was the person who invented the balloon, but the Incas and the Mayans, we have evidence that they had balloons in their possession and were able to float, high up and to travel in these balloons and things.